the 360 deal now, and you were with BBR Management, which was affiliated and owned by Broken Bow Records. Oftentimes, it's up to the manager to fight the fight with the label for resources, promotions, etc. Was that hard given the relationship with the label? Was that part of the reason for you starting Pennington Entertainment?
No, actually, it wasn't at all. My arrangement with the label was the reason I left to start to do my own thing was, one, I'm at that point in my life. Everybody has a bell curve to their career in the music industry. I'm not sure where I'm at this point, but I'm going to be 40 years old this year, and if I'm ever going to fly my own flag and do my own thing, I've got to get started. So that was kind of the driving decision for me in terms of wanting to do my own thing. I didn't actually work for the label. Benny Brown, who owns Broken Bow and Stony Creek Records, Wheelhouse, Red Bow Records, and Magic Mustang, he and I were actually business partners in the management thing, in the management side of it. And so as a result, I got to say no, so to speak. So if you're somebody's employee, at the end of the day, it's your employer's prerogative to give you basically whatever marching orders that they want, and that can definitely be a conflict of interest when it comes between a manager and label relationship, or has the potential to, I should say. How I avoided that and kind of walked the line of making sure maintaining fiduciary responsibility to my artist was to be business partners, to where basically I don't have to work with every act. I didn't have to work with every act that came through the door. If we didn't agree, I could say no, and quite frankly, there was nothing I could do about it. So we did that, along the lines of 360. Everybody knows that the world's getting smaller and smaller. People are selling less and less music. Even digital sales are, in decline, and streaming is taking over everything. Some people are anti that. I'm actually for streaming, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I actually support it. But as a result, there's millions and millions and billions of less revenue than there used to be. And it costs millions and millions of dollars to launch an artist's career. And if the label doesn't have a way of getting their money back, what's their incentive for wanting to do it? So we created that as a way to share in resources, both in staff and in revenue and expenses, and to create a win for everybody. And so that's why we did that, and it worked. It worked great. And I believe the 360 is necessary. If you want to have a career, some people, I just recently spoke with an artist who was boasting that they have one of the last non-360 deals at a label here in town, and I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't understand why, they were excited about that, because all that means is the label's going to care less about you than they are somebody that they do have a piece of. Yeah, that's my take on that.
You started to touch on it with drop in sales and downloads and the rise of streaming. Where do you think the business is heading?
My opinion, which ought to be yours. What was that quote when we were in that bar the other day? Something about opinions. What was it? Sorry, I just saw a squirrel. What was that quote? Remember it was up on the something about opinions? It was the best quote ever.
I don't care about your opinion as long as it's mine or something.
Yeah. I don't care about your opinion as long as it's mine. Shit, I wish I remember what it was. Anyhow, my take on it is, I believe that streaming is here. I mean, obviously, streaming was 33 or 34% of all music revenue last year. Digital was 34%, and the balance was physical, which is 28%, I think it was actually physical sales. It's getting, in physical and digital getting smaller and smaller. Streaming's taking over, and there's just not the revenue there. That, in my mind, is going to ultimately put record labels out of business, because with 360 deals these days, there just isn't enough revenue to offset what it costs to work an artist at traditional radio or terrestrial radio. So my take on it is I believe ultimately what's going to happen, whether that's next year, 5 years, 10 years, I believe that labels are going to, I don't want to say go by the wayside, but I believe they're going to be management centric and not label centric. I think the problem, if a label had it their way, they would manage the artist and they would publish and they would, be the label. And quite frankly, that's what needs to happen in order for us all to continue to have jobs over the next 20 years. But I don't think, just like I don't know that I could run Sony Records because my mind's not wired that way, I don't believe that most people in label positions would be great at managing an artist's career. Not because there aren't a lot of the same synergies and whatnot, but because it just takes a different kind of person, quite frankly, and we're wired differently, and we deal with things that they don't traditionally deal with. And I have personally negotiated multi-million-dollar deals. I've also had to tell an artist that their parent passed away, and so it runs the gamut in terms of what you do as a manager. It is business, but it's also personal in a lot of ways, and there's no limits to what we do. And I think the problem with most, and one other thing is, we understand touring, and we understand the touring business, and the merchandising business, and the sponsorship business, and quite frankly, I just don't think that most people on the label side do. They look at it from a different perspective. They look at it from quite frankly, still trying to sell records perspective, or trying to sell downloads. And they don't think about, they haven't spent 20 years thinking about the touring side of it because they never had a piece of it anyway. So I think that it's a skill set thing is what it is. And so I think that as we stop trying to sell music and we focus more and more on all that's left, which is tickets, t-shirts, and sponsorships, that it's going to take people with those skill sets to manage and grow those to their maximum potential. And I think the learning curve is again, it's an experience thing, and I think the learning curve for somebody who hasn't done it for a long time is just too steep to just switch gears and jump into it. So my take on it is eventually, and quite frankly, what I'm trying to do here is build I hate to use the word label because I don't like the word label, but the label of the future kind of thing, where we're signing acts, we're creating content and music, we're working radio, we're working the online streamers, we're handling PR, tour marketing, social media, digital. Like we literally do every single thing within these walls, and that is kind of a Death Star, so to speak. In that we just own and control everything, but it's operated from a management perspective. In that the ultimate goal is tickets and T-shirts, touring, that kind of thing. And I think that slowly but surely, quite frankly, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with terrestrial radio, because it's just, when we sign an act, when a record label signs an act, and to make that first record work one single up the chart, if you're lucky enough to get it to number one, it's around $750,000 to $1 million, $750,000 to $1 million. You got to sell like 2.5 million downloads just to get even, and it's just. And most acts don't sell that anymore, and streaming's taken over, so the revenue's just not there. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens as people have less and less money to chase terrestrial radio and try and have a hit on terrestrial radio. The other side of that, and that, to me, that's just something you just can't control. There's so many variables go into that, and you just can't control it. So the way I look at it is, why not go the other way? And obviously, hope and pray you get whatever you get at terrestrial radio, but focus on the things you can control, which is, where people can find you online and on your device and everything else. And there's a lot of ways of, to me, airplay is anywhere you hear a song, whether it's YouTube, Pandora, the radio, a ringtone. I don't know how many people even use ringtones anymore, but like just literally anywhere where you hear either hear the song or the artist can touch you, through Facebook Live. I mean, there's so many different things now, ways to touch people, but you have to do it in an organized fashion, so that's part of your constant process for reaching out to people. And again, you can control it. Like if you've got a Facebook page, you can control what you put on there, when you put on there. You can control when your fans talk to you, and you can talk back to them. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people get lazy. So my thinking on the whole deal is that you just have to treat that basically. I treat Facebook like it's a television channel, and you just own it as such, because quite frankly, that's where most of the world's at. I don't know what the exact number is, but it was like 800 million people or a billion people. I don't know what it is on Facebook now. And it's just like, and it's worldwide, and it's genreless. You're not chasing a single chart, a rock chart, a country chart, whatever. You're not worried about, there's 50 airplay weeks in terrestrial radio a year. That means there's only going to be 50 number one records a year, because 2 weeks a year freeze. So, in Nashville alone, there's 48 acts on Universal. There's 23 acts on Broken Bow. I don't know what the rest is, but you can already do the math. There's probably 150 to 200 acts that all combined, that all the labels that are all chasing those same 50 spots. So it's a numbers game. It's hard to spend $1 million and quantify any kind of result, because, like I said, I've had number ones that have sold 200,000. I've had number ones that have sold 2 million. I've had number ones that drove touring money through the roof, and I've had number ones that people never showed up. So who knows? So I think we have to be smarter about how we spend our money moving forward, and I think that artists are going to have to be better. I think that people are going to have to be more hands-on and more in the trenches, control the things we can control, put out a great product, touch people, work a little harder, and I think that to me that's where the future's at.